I am NetMoverSitan. Welcome to the lore video on Refraction Line 3, MirrorClock. I'll try to do it in an in-universe context. It's that time again. Another refraction line to farther strain the damned dozen. The first one was a straight line. The second one was a circular train line with a terminus in the middle that got longer and progressively harder as it was travelled through. Okay, it was more an oval, but you get the idea. This one was a more straightforward circle, both in appearance and in the fact that it didn't have a decayed loop. I'll also be coming up with a story-based explanation for this, partially based on the reports given on the newer abnormalities. Okay, now where to begin? Oh yes, the cutscene that introduced this. Now considering that their, excursion to the outskirts gift factory was during 984-08, and the second Walpurgis night was during 984-09, then this was set around 984-09 or 984-0, well, 110. Yes, 984-10. Charon said, "Warning, warning, land ahoy," after she was quietly holding the helm for a while. Her speaking up caused everyone in the cabin to jump up from their seats, their joy obvious at the prospect of the end of their long journey across the Great Lake. Rodya asking if it was finally over. Yisang's eyes welled with tears of relief due to the idea that he wouldn't have to vomit regularly. Honestly, I hope he's taking nutritional supplements intravenously. Otherwise, it's a miracle that he didn't die of malnutrition. Gregor was laughing at this briefly, saying if they ever go on vacation, or if they were ever allowed to go on vacation rather, they should avoid any seafaring options, as he's had enough of the Great Lake for one lifetime. Some were visibly relaxed with the realization that the long lake voyage has finally come to an end. Others rushed to the windows as if they were expecting anything to have changed while they were away from the shores. Not unless a distortion on the same levels the pianist has appeared in the months that they've been at sea. If anything has changed, it's marginal at best. Ishmael saw them as overdramatic. In her sailor days, setting sail in the Great Lake meant that they'd have to spend... And then Heathcliff annoyingly completed that sentence by saying, "At least 3 years at the treacherous sea, out of any landsman's sight." He's heard that exact sentence a few dozen times by now. And he's showing an incredible amount of restraint, resisting the urge to bash her skull in. Otis agreed with him. She made her point, and she found it difficult to tolerate when she began sharing that story for the 4th time. This made Ishmael complain that they were the ones that complained that no one had any fun stories to tell. And just as they were exchanging a few meaningless jabs at each other, Mephistopheles suddenly jerked violently, as though something exploded. They were all thrown about like rag dolls. Rodya was clearly annoyed by this. Dante checked to see everyone was okay. Heathcliff had a dark look on him, complaining that the bloody bus can't come to a smooth stop for once. Yeah, clearly, whenever Mephistopheles was constructed, the brakes were bought at a substantial discount. Then he realized something. They were on a bus. Dante took a quick look around. The cabins had indeed transformed back to the shape of the bus that they'd grown used to. Charon hit the transform button. Click-clack. Rodia asked if she could at least give them a warning for once, or at least a turn signal. Gregor agreed with Rodia. Charon told him that Busboat doesn't have turn signals. Too bad, bug guy. The annoyance was clear on Gregor. Dante thought that there was some complicated procedure to transform it back into a bus, rather than the click of a button. Sinclair thought that they needed to stop at a workshop or a bootworks office again. Faust explained that one of the many functions of Mephistopheles is that it can remember every form or property it once possessed. Once it takes a certain form, it can revert to it or any of its previous forms at any time. This clarified it for Sinclair. Honglu cheerfully remarked that they're finally back on land, asking Heathcliff if he's glad that they are. He's been so looking forward to that. This surprised Heathcliff. This provoked a vortex of complicated feelings. He then asked Vroomlas if they're at the nest of District 20. She didn't reply, either because he didn't call her by her name, or perhaps she didn't really know where they were either, as her sense of direction was unreliable at best. Yi Sang recognized the monochromatic grey hue of District 20, yet there was a disparity. Heathcliff was asking if it was a different monochromatic hue that they were in currently. Dante then remembered what this was like, based on their witnessing Yi Sang's background story. Within the fathoms of E.G.O, within that K-Corp building. Yes, as for District 20, that was supposed to take their colours away. Either that's specific to the nest, or those within Mephistopheles are unaffected by this. Then Virgilius told Heathcliff to be patient. They're still in the back streets. They're getting quite close to a place that he knows so well. And this caught Heathcliff's attention, and not for positive reasons. Dante told Virgilius that he had no reason to provoke him like that. Ishmael asked Virgilius if there was a reason why they're going through the back streets instead of heading straight to the nest. Dante saw her point and asked why they were going through the back streets. This was something Urtis wanted to know as well, as the backstreet roads are places of they're places of danger and winding roundabout paths, carrying an unnecessary risk as far as she was aware. Likely remembering District 4. And those trying to get on that bus. Massault reminded him that the immigration process is significantly more lenient when one is migrating from a nest to a nest, rather than migrating from the back streets to the nest. Clearly Ishmael's question encouraged others to do the same. Virgilius remarks on how much more chatty they've become since they first met, telling them that it won't change how he chooses to answer his questions. They can ask all they want, but he won't spare the time to give them a comprehensive explanation for their convenience. Ishmael asked what was wrong with asking for some explanations if they're being led through a questionable path. His job was to tell them where they were going, and Virgilius sounded annoyed by this. Ishmael asked if they'd not been authorized to enter the nest of District 20 yet, questioning if Limbus Company is a proper business, even considering that it's relatively new. She thought they had substantial backing. Faust told her that they can receive proper authorization to enter most nests, should they request it. District 21 was likely a more difficult case due to the hazard of waves and the port ships moving. As for Districts 1 through 3, they're the ones in charge of the city, so of course, security there will be, well, it'll likely be tighter than the corsets in the late Victorian era. Ishmael was about to ask why. Then Virgilius told her that it's the company's will, and this silenced everyone. He told them that his job as their guide was to plan a path towards the destination, as requested by the company. Selecting that path was also a part of accommodating that request, so he asked her to know her place and shut her mouth. Clearly, his role as a guide is to plan out the routes that they'll be going to, which is wherever Limbus Company needs them to go to, and to tell them what they need to know. Unfortunately, there are times when Virgilius can't give them specific information. Not because he doesn't want to, nor is it because it would violate the terms of his contracts, but because he can't tell them what he doesn't know himself. All he knows at the time is that they're making a detour through the back streets of District 20, despite this complicating the immigration procedure into the nest, because it's the company's will, and it's something to do with Heathcliff. Virgilius was certainly frustrated at the questions that he was incapable of answering, regardless of whether or not he wanted to. It was starting to get to him. Ishmael still had doubt on her face, but she understood that his hands were tied, and he can't tell her what he doesn't know himself, and decided against questioning him further. Then Dante recognized the alarm that was sounding. Rodio was questioning if someone was listening in on them, as the alarm was conveniently timed. Faust saw this as unlikely. Dante recognized the look on her after she checked the terminal. They saw it as another volatility to be taken care of. Faust confirmed this. Roger complained that it's another one. They're just wrapped up a backdoor volatility, likely referring to the Second Walpurgis Night, where they entered a world that was at least 11 years and 9 months in the past. Within Lobotomy Corporation HQ during the 10-year construction of the Seed of Light. Sometime during an attempt when it was at least day 6 and the Green Dawn ordeals appeared. Gregor understood the pattern. First the mirror dungeons, then the Luxcavation dungeons, so it had to be... Faust saw this as a positive development in Gregor due to his growing aptitude for deductions. He annoyingly asked if it's the Refraction Railway. And this annoyance was shared by the rest of the damned dozen. Well, except for Faust, of course. Heathcliff's mood darkened, saying, "Oh, soddy, it's that bloody subway tracks again." Rodia was always worn out each time she entered the Refraction Railways. Sinclair understood that since the last one was called Line 2, this one would be called Line 3. Faust saw this as likely, though they can't say for certain before observing it for themselves. Dante understood this to mean that they're going through them. It takes a lot out of Dante as well. So far, each Refraction Railway has had new and different patterns. The enemies that they faced there was much more powerful than any others that they faced before, but it's true that the combat prowess of Task Force Damned has shown a noticeable improvement once they've had a run through it. The rewards are also great from going through it. At some point, Faust took the time to explain the abnormalities within the Refraction railway line. Those that they battled in them were not the same ones that existed in their world. They're unable to capture them and bring them back. They're perfect for practice, though, in case they run into the real versions. It's a net positive regardless, so Dante announced they were going in. They took a quick glance at the others and then opened the door to the back door. They all went towards Dante's room and found that the door that had a green stripe on it was now orange. And when they entered the Refraction line's first station, they noticed that the map was like a clock. It was even listed as the MirrorClock, much to Dante's irritation. Certainly when Heathcliff pointed it out that the line looks like a clockhead. Dante annoyingly ordered them to board the train. Heathcliff knew better than to continue speaking of this, due to how serious this situation was. Well, more so than usual. They then headed to the first station. They arrived at the first station and encountered a familiar sight, and at a familiar strength. The mermaids of the Whale of the Porous Hand. Those that they fought while breaking the laws of the Great Lake, and getting caught in a wave, all to save time on their journey to the branch facility. These were nothing that they couldn't handle. Heathcliff was thinking that Mephistopheles or whatever was making the Refraction railways were growing soft on them. But Ishmael knew better. She knew that it would be unlikely to remain so. Faust agreed with her, based on all available information, as did Yi Sang and Method. Brutus was about to say something about complacency in battle, but Heathcliff told her to shut it. He gets it. And also to move on. After defeating this group of enemies, they moved on to the next station, and when they stepped off to meet what was on Station 2, or rather in Station 2, they encountered something familiar in an unfamiliar environment. The mermaids of the Whale of the Thousand Strands. These mermaids were left behind on a mini cruise ship after they were transformed by the Whale of the Thousand Strands. Although these felt tougher than the originals, and after they were all beaten, they encountered what was the second to last obstacle to the Golden Bar, the dream-devouring silt currents. They understood how to deal with this one. Break the flotsam, lure it into the broken flotsam, cause it more damage than just hitting it, and then suppress it. This was still painful to Ishmael, as she was reminded of what happened not long after. Sinclair helped her to shake it off. Him understanding personal loss better than most. Gregor reminding her that they've got more stops to go through before they're done there. Don Quixote joyously wanting to challenge their enemies, much to the annoyance of those able to openly express it. The dream-devouring silt current represents the fear of the deep, of the unfathomable horrors that lie and even hide beneath the waves. Ishmael has good reasons to have this fear due to the dangers of the Great Lake, and what she encountered personally. Then, in Station 3, they encountered something new. The drenched Gossipium. This was previously encountered in the fort space of it, the Mirror Dungeon. This was a flower that pierced them and fed on their blood. Heathcliff wasn't able to provide much in the way of insights regarding this, just that he complained that its E.G.O gift in the Mirror Dungeon helped prevent their enemies from getting staggered. It also drained their blood. Then it turned red when it was fed on enough. Rather, they were fed on from enough. Yes, cutting the vines wouldn't work, and when it turned red, a powerful attack would be made. He also noted that it was best to hit it hard and often, which surprisingly worked. As for what this likely represented, it likely represented the meaning of her life being slowly bled out of her. Specifically by Ahab slowly doing this. Although not literally. Certainly not in the form of blood. Then they found a rest stop at Station 4, where they could not only heal up, revive any that were killed in the battles that they fought to get to that point, but they could also do something else. Honglu thought this was rather considerate of whatever made a refraction line. Roger even noting that they can change their setup and even suggested that they consider modifying their identities in E.G.O before they move forward. Those that decided, and indeed desired to do so, did so, and then they continued onward with their journey through the MirrorClock refraction line. At the 5th station, they encountered the Ambling Pearl, an abnormality that they encountered as they first started their journey from Pigwad Town inside the Pallid Whale. Heathcliff was saying, "Bloody hell, this is tougher than last time." Faust told him that the refraction rate was increasing. Urtis told him to focus on fighting. They have enough to worry about with the larvae and the poison without his pointless chatter. They eventually suppressed this abnormality as they cleared the slime and then attacked the pearl until it was defeated. They then moved on to Station 6. Yes, Station 6, and they encountered the Skin Prophet. Yisang said, "In light, the truth shall reveal itself." Gregor then roughly translated that to, "Yeah, we get it, pal. Light the candles and we can fight the abnormality." They did so, alternating between lighting the candles and fighting the abnormality, dealing with the burning that it delivers. Urtis noting that the burning would be a problem if it wasn't mitigated. Massault confirmed this, as the burns would slowly eat away at them until they were charred remains. Dante didn't want that, as they'd feel the burning as they'd revive them. They eventually suppressed this abnormality and moved on to Station 7, and Ishmael remembered, or at least recognized, what this one was. This was the Ardor Blossom Moth, the source of the Ardor Blossom Star E.G.O that she sometimes wielded. A burning moth that bombarded them with fire. Yisang was reminded of his youth in District 19, when he observed it. He noted that the wings were its weakness, and that the more embers they had on them, the bigger the explosion when it fanned those wings to spark the embers. They did well enough to reduce the burn, at least enough to keep fighting and suppress it. They then got to the next rest stop in Station 8. or rather on Station 8. This was a relief to all that thought the previous abnormalities. Faust considered it fortunate that they equipped as little burning E.G.O. as possible, as it was ill-advised to take chances with those that were capable of burning. Don Quixote was then reminded of what happened when Ishmael used her Lu Association identity on So That No One Will Cry, which annoyed Ishmael, who had a murderous look on her face. Cynthia then told them that they can use them after, so they should review what works and what hasn't worked, which impressed Urtis for his foresight. After they were sufficiently prepared, they moved on to the next station. As for what these abnormalities represent, those that ate away at the HP of the combatants, the ambling pearl likely represents the shell that Ishmael has been forming around herself since she lost everything that mattered to her. The one that she maintained around the damned dozen until relatively recently. The skin prophet represented what she was experiencing when among Ahab's crew, the indoctrination and conditioning that turned Queequeg into Ahab's loyal dog, Pip into a deranged lunatic that would make Don Quixote seem rational, and Starbuck into little more than Captain Ahab's yes-man. However, despite all of Ahab's best efforts to do the same with Ishmael, she failed. The Ardor Blossom Moth likely represents the feeling of fiery rage within Ishmael, the kind gained from personal loss, which in this case was Queequeg, as those two had become close. The rage was focused on Ahab, the one that conditioned the others to obey her, only to be used and thrown away at her psychotic whim. On Station 9, they encountered the palidified humans and the mermaids of the Pallid Whale, those that they first fought in the palidified branch facility, where they were too late to save the LCCB agents left behind, after the Twin Hook pirates in the middle decided to leave that branch facility before the Pallid Whale came to devour it. Gregor was starting to feel the strain. Roger agreed with him, thinking that they could do with something to eat after this is done. Urtis told them to stop complaining and to take it out on the enemy, even though she tried to hide her own mental fatigue. After they were all beaten, they moved on to Station 10, and at Station 10, Ishmael was hit the hardest by what she encountered there. It was the Pequod Town villagers. She knew what was to come. They fought through the villagers, and then they encountered a familiar trio: Ahab, Queequeg, and Starbuck. Heathcliff, surprisingly, reminded Ishmael that Queequeg and Starbuck are both dead. He's not sure about Ahab, though. She was a tough lass. She manifested E.G.O. and they didn't finish her off. Then he stopped himself, believing they said too much. Yisang then said that they are but shadows of what they have previously fought. They should not treat them as if they were what they appear to be. Yes, what they appeared to be was not what they were. Ishmael then restored her focus, and they fought the trio. They took out Starbuck for his damage potential. Then they were forced to take down Queequeg next, due to her stepping in the way of the blows meant for Ahab, the one commanding them. Yes, the questioning first mate turned yes man was first to be taken down. The former middle thug turned brain-damaged harpooner and close friend Ishmael fell after. This was still painful to Ishmael, seeing her close friend die again. And finally, Ahab. They could guess what would be next. At the next station they were going to. They moved on to Station 11, and as they predicted, they fought the tougher version of Ahab wielding her gas harpoon E.G.O. A possible representation of her obsession with the pallid whale and her desire to gaslight those that question her. Yes, fueled by the souls of her most loyal crew members, Don Quixote wanted to silence the spreader of lies and doubts that saw her crewmates as worthless. Heathcliff complained that she was a to take down the first time. How are they going to do it when she has a lot more on her? Ishmael told him, with determination and a desire for victory. Otis approved of this, and they fought the E.G.O. wielding Ahab, who once again used the souls of Pip, Starbuck, and Queequeg, respectively. After they eventually defeated her, Ishmael then told them that she didn't care if Ahab was dead or not. Her past with her was dead, as far as she was concerned. Then they headed to the last rest stop at Station 12. Dante then told them, as they revived those that needed that and healed those that were still alive but badly beaten, were regaining their senses, they informed them that this would appear to be the last chance to change their setup. Once they passed this point and arrived at the terminus, there was no going back. They would either defeat the abnormality or they would fail. Once they set up their preferences, they then moved on to the terminus. At Station 13, there was something else there that was new. The third abnormality that they only encountered in the thought space. As in, within the mirror dungeon. This was the spiral of contempt. Radia was reminded of the feeling that she felt often when she was living in District 25. A gaze of hatred and contempt. Then one of them had a crazy idea. They'd act as bait for the hands that would appear below, and were grasped by it. They then used multi-target E.G.O. to damage both the abnormality and the hands. They were able to free the one that was trapped, and as a result they were able to make it weak to a specific damage type and sin affinity. They then kept it up with the beating, preferably with either the damage type or the sin affinity that it was weak to now, preferably both. Even feeling the damage to both body and mind that the gaze of the spiral of contempt was dealing, but with the additional weakness provided by the sacrifice of one of them. Well, certainly the risk. They were able to suppress it before they were wiped out, and they completed the MirrorClock Refraction railway line. Don Quixote cheered for this victory. Otis agreed with this. Honglu then noticed the rewards that they earned from this. Faust then collected them from the lost and found box that contained them. Dante would have much to think about regarding what to use these resources on, especially when they were reminded that they were heading to the back streets of District 20 to a place familiar to Heathcliff, before heading to the nest of District 20. Thankfully, it was the end of business for the day. Yes, the end of business for the day, so they had a well-earned rest. Dante was sure that there were more trials ahead of them besides the ones that they needed to go to, but they were sure that they had overcome them as they did this one. The spiral of contempt. It likely represents the feeling of hatred and contempt that Ishmael felt towards Ahab, since she willingly sent her crew into the Pallid Whale, and this feeling only grew when she used those that she picked up over the course of her time inside the Pallid Whale, and discarded them to test out the way forward. And also when they outlasted their usefulness. Well, it looks like next is the second half of Chapter 5.5. Until next time. Hail the rabbits!